Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. This is the Camel Call podcast, and boy, what a treat we have for you today. All four of us are here. We'll start with the old-timer, at least when it comes to podcasts. Evan Budrovich,
as someone who's
here.
31, I kind of take offense to being the old-timer of the table, but that's okay.
I know, but we're gonna skew younger. We're gonna go with Campbell alum, and you know him now as our director of creative, but of course on so many soccer and women's lacrosse broadcast over the years. Zach Berly. Zach, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, man, it's so good to be here. I'm glad to finally get on this stage of things. People are used to hearing my voice over the airwaves. Now they get to hear me in their cars, in the shower, everywhere else you listen to. So glad to be here. Go Camels.
And speaking of someone that'll make you feel old, not intentionally, but because he's 22, but so much more than that in broadcasting years. It's a Campbell alum, now a GA in both broadcasting and with the video streaming. He does pretty much everything with Flow College and much more. Lendl Suggs. Lendl, hey.
To be noted, I'll be 23 next month.
Oh, your Taylor Swift year's coming to an end.
Yeah. LeBron year coming up.
Oh, there you go.
LeBron year coming up. Or Taylor Swift year. Okay, guys. You know, not only is it we've wrapped up the fall season, everything but football last time out. Winter season really in the middle and coming to the end of non-conference season, so we'll talk about that. Spring ahead, but what a interesting calendar year it has been for Campbell Athletics, the world of athletics, and it's that time where you kind of look back and see everything that's happened here at Campbell.
I was loading some pictures for like best photos of the year, and I forgot that Braxton's press conference was one of the first days in January. That book ends the year. And it ends with us playing in Chapel Hill, with basketball being the number 2 sport now in Carolina, with Belichick and then Hubert Davis.
Never number 2.
To have that end of the spectrum for a whole year. I mean, sure, it wasn't a championship-laden 2024, but there were some really big softball moments in the spring. It was neat to see our programs get better, especially on the football side, the soccer side. And then there was some rebuilding with volleyball, getting healthy, but we now realize what our level is and what we can rise to.
I think to sum up 2024, it would be the year of the change. 4 coaches changes so far. A lot of changes with the CAA going into it, figuring out who we are just in the CAA with the full year. A lot of change, and we'll really see it in 2025 in the spring. Most of our coaches changes were spring hires this year. So we'll really see what it looks like in the spring. But I think 2024 was kind of the year of figuring out where we are, what it looks like to be in the CAA, what our level is in the CAA, how we can compete, where we can compete, and where we can grow. And I think 2024 was really the year that showed us what we could be and where we need to grow at. And I just think it's the year of the change, honestly.
There's a lot to be proud of what we were able to do this year. I think what's really interesting is how much college landscape is changing as a whole, and then we're having to go to the CAA at the same time. So all of us, both as staff members and then the people who are coaching our teams and the players, are experiencing a whole new level, not only of college athletics, but a new phase in Campbell history in the CAA, and I think there's been a lot to be proud of.
Yeah, and that's a big part of this story. Again, I was reminded during basketball season, because there's times when you think about Campbell winning all these championships in the Big South, coming to the CAA. We warned everybody that this would be a few sports we'd be able to come in and right away compete at the top of the conference, but there would be a lot more where we would have to build up to it. And again, during basketball season, and not to pile on these universities and our former teams in the Big South, but especially when it comes to basketball, in the Big South were 3 of the smallest and quite frankly, least wanted arenas in all of Division I. Those were who we were lumped in with. And that went on to more and more facilities, things that you didn't notice. I remember Coach Easley from women's lacrosse, when the announcement was made, she's going from a Big South conference where she was competitive in, she challenged for a trophy each and every year, and to the CAA, which is one of the best women's lacrosse conferences in the country. And she said, this is going to be a really good thing for our student athletes because you don't know the fields we play on, the facilities that we have. And that was one of the many good reasons why going to the CAA was the right move. You have to think about where it's going to be and where it's going to position us in 5 and 10 years. And we knew we're going to go through a little bit of not winning everything like we thought. It is a shock when a Campbell team does not make a conference tournament, let alone compete for a conference title.
I'm going to edit my original sentence there. 2024 is a year of refreshing and recalibrating for the athletic department. One, with the coaches, like Lendl mentioned. Two, from a performance standpoint, the bar has been set now of here's the expectation. Whether that's making a tournament, whether that's rising to the top, Campbell understands how to compete in this league, and they better have positioned themselves financially, athletically, from a team standpoint. Here's what we need to do to not only survive in the league, but thrive. So shifting that mindset. In the Big South, you noted, the level of parity was not the same. Now in the CAA, we go from being the top dog to the middle of the pack. So understanding where we sit in each sport and how to continue to grow every year.
Yeah, and you take the circumstances that were as well. Baseball, historic injuries on that team kept them out. Softball won their fourth straight regular season title, came into the new conference and won right away. Our soccer teams this year, you take one goal from one game in each of their seasons and turn it around, and they're in the conference tournament. And both, I think, the way they were playing at the end of the year, had a little bit of a chance to make a run. This is a volleyball team that was going to be a huge rebuild no matter what conference they were in this year, and they had some catastrophic injuries. And then everywhere else, football, a huge rebuild. Braxton Harris has had to come in and change the culture, change the mindset of the team. A lot of players went out. So it's just sort of all these things funneling in together that, hey, it is a lot better if you know going behind the paper and the record what's going on here, but it is what it is. And again, you have to look at this in 2, 3, 4, 5 years before you can make a judgment. Was this a good or a not so good move? And I think everybody's going to agree it's going to be a good move. The wins are going to come, new coaches in place, and that continues.
I think Zach hit it on the head, is the move to the CAA, and it couldn't have come at a more pivotal time in college athletics than what we're seeing with television deals, conference realignment, and all these other things on top of each other, where you're going from a step up to a different level of play. But it also happens at the same time where college athletics as a whole is looking at what it has been and where it's going, to where a lot of people that haven't moved conferences but have been powers in their conferences are kind of looking everywhere and going, what are we going to do for the next 5 or so years to figure out who we're going to be with those things? So I think Zach hit it right, is those two on top of each other really make you look at Campbell Athletics and go, whoa, what is going on right now? And why are we looking at the things the way we are?
Yeah, I think to build off of that, you've seen, talking about that change, Coastal Carolina and Liberty, both members of conferences that we've played in the past, or teams that we've been a lot around, they made big moves even before all of this change and they've been able to build themselves. There are other schools like that, and that's not to say this is the trajectory of where Campbell hopes to be one day. Those are very unique schools, but that just goes to show you that it does take ambition at this level to go out and to try new things. And so I think that level of ambition, taking a big bite and showing, hey, we really want to be playing with, I mean, you talk about the names that are in the CAA. I think it's a great piece of ambition and a real eye forward to where this university and the department wants to go.
Yeah, and you think about, too, in the middle of this change that was going to be challenging the horizon of what's in store for the NCAA and the House settlement. And look, we're not going to talk about that till it's final, because it has been delayed, and lawsuits are coming left and right on it. But if it is what it is, Campbell has also had to get ahead of that with different decisions that have been made in addition to becoming to the CAA. So it is a very unique time, but I would much rather be facing all this, as you guys said so eloquently, in the CAA, an established conference with schools and athletic departments that have been not only around for 100 years, but have been D1 for many, many years. And there is a lot more of them, quite frankly. You know, 3 teams can shuffle out, and this is still a conference that is not worrying about an AQ, that's not worrying about everybody leaving because a couple of schools leave, and it'll be interesting for some time to come. And again, the games, just the names on your schedule because of the conference you are in, make your schedule that much better year in and year out.
Yeah, when you replace Charleston Southern, Presbyterian with William and Mary, UNCW, Charleston, even A&T and Hampton, those teams that have established names that you can put out there and people know, oh yeah, I kind of have an idea who this team is. that is a difference in your schedule, especially on campus and around this area, to get people to come around.
And even beyond that, you have to remember every single, I would say, maybe there's one or two outliers in the CAA, has a ranked team in each of them. Yep. Soccer, volleyball, football, yep. All of them. And so you're going RPI standards. This is giving our coaches ammunition. You talked about Dawn Easley earlier. That's the first thing she said to me is, you don't know how much this is giving us in the recruiting, how much more I can go out and say things. So when you talk about who we're playing and then who we can recruit with, it's just giving our coaches so much more to take out there with them.
Yeah, absolutely. So we dive in here head first to it has been a winter so far that has been really, really interesting. You'll remember the last time we met with you all on this podcast and we were all around this table. It was November 1st and we were talking about, hey, look, we're just going to warn you ahead of time. This is a women's basketball team that lost a lot. They have a lot of freshmen coming in, a lot of newcomers. It is going to take them a while to get their feet under them. And my goodness, we knew a little bit about the freshmen. We didn't quite know the quality of the freshmen that Ronnie Fisher brought in. Kudos to him and his coaching staff that has put together a really, really competitive squad that has raised some eyebrows and have bolted out to a pretty good record to start the year.
For those of you who know Ronnie Fisher, he's throwing off his suit jacket right now and stomping into the room saying, how dare you doubt my ability to coach. I'll give him credit, especially against the bigger opponents, the Miamis, the Wake Forest this year.
That was a good game.
Having leads in both those games, especially against Wake in the fourth quarter. That's a thing that even Campbell teams of the past would do well against their competition, the FIUs, the Big South, the Sun Belt, but couldn't take that step against elite competition. We're seeing more of that this year, and I think Olivia Tucker's the big difference. She's the top recruit in this class. She'll be all CAA this year. You can bookmark that now. But more impressively, with Sierra Alexander and then Olivia Tucker. Think about if Campbell keeps these players, because remember now we have to discuss revenue sharing and transfer portal. Mm-hmm. If the system Ronnie builds that develops and turns a Shai Thule from someone in the middle of the mountains of Tennessee into an all-time three-point shooter, develops these next freshman classes, Campbell in 2 years will be amazing. And it's that growth process. They go from probably being a 500 team this year to going a few games above 500, to then having a chance to win the league. It's the slow play, but it's the long-term best option for a school like us.
Well, I just want to point out that women's basketball was my hot take of the year. I said they would probably be the best team in the winter. And that's only because I kind of figured with last year looking at Hofstra, how they went all the way through the CAA, that give Ronnie some time throughout the year to develop, looking at the schedule. They've got a lot of hard games coming up. Knowing how they can compete defensively, I think that's kind of where last year's team kind of fell off in the tournament, is that they couldn't compete defensively with some of the older players that they have. They just didn't have it in them. Bringing in some fresh guys, some fresh girls rather, to kind of help that. I figured they would compete. I didn't figure that the freshmen would be this good this early. But I think the unsung hero as we look at all the freshmen, all of that, is Courtney Dahlquist. I think that her presence, only playing 3 games last year, coming in and scoring well, double-doubles in these games, but being the ringmaster on the floor. You can tell, obviously, Gemma is the ring general and she directs the traffic and she does all that, but you can tell that Courtney is there to keep the culture together and keep what we know Campbell women's basketball to be. And I just, like Evan said, I think that in 2 years they'll be really dangerous, but I think in March, if this is not their best brand of basketball yet, in March I think they'll be dangerous.
And to have the second best record in the league with a team with 5 new faces, like you mentioned, you just don't see that in basketball. And I think something with Ronnie, and you noted this, defensively they've always been elite, but this year he's sped them up. It's a more entertaining brand. There were 3,000 kids jumping for joy, mostly because of the music, but they enjoyed the basketball too this week for Education Day. Like, he has integrated a new system of play, which I think long-term is an evolution. We see older coaches in the sport, the Mike Krzyzewskis, others that haven't adapted to the style. Mm-hmm. He's changed his style of play, and it's actually helped his team.
I appreciate the volume of threes and how they're spread out, because I think Ronnie knows going into the CAA, they're at a height disadvantage. We're one of the smaller teams in the CAA. But looking at Hofstra, They were one of the smaller teams last year who beat the dominant Stony Brook team who had all the trees in the paint. I think adapting to what he has, looking at what he has and says, we've got to shoot threes well, and we've got to shoot them at a higher volume, and having everyone spread around, really stretching out the bigs. I think that's why we see them winning more games, because they're able to run the pace, hold defensively, and really get out there and shoot in volume. And I think that really works for him.
Yeah, it's been incredible. And you touched on it a little bit, but if you haven't been following closely, it's a 6-4 team, but it's who they beat. High Point, ETSU, Furman. They've been playing names. And then you mentioned playing the Power Fours. And in women's basketball, there's usually so much more of a gap. But this is a team against Miami who is receiving votes at Miami. It was a one-possession game down the stretch, an offensive rebound, change what would have been a Campbell chance at a heave at the half to pull off one of the biggest upsets. And at Wake Forest, they were leading by a lot at halftime. It was a 2-point game going into the fourth quarter. They are hanging with these Power 5 teams. So it'll be interesting. They go up against another one. They're not going to surprise anybody now. They're at Virginia Tech on December 21st. Then back home, final non-conference game of the year, December 30th, versus Bethune-Cookman. They'll be here for their first CAA game versus Hampton on January 12th. If you have not seen the women's team this year, come out and see them. You'll be impressed with the updated style of play, as you guys pointed out, and then these freshmen too.
And crucially, Chris, the biggest difference between those Miami-Wake Forest games and Virginia Tech, I was not there. I will be in Blacksburg. We'll see what effect that has.
Undefeated when Zach Berly is covering the women's team. On to men's basketball. As we talked about, this was on paper and still is one of the deepest and most talented teams that Kevin McGeehan has had when you go 1 through 10. We mentioned it that way too. Sometimes when you have, and again, he has 10, 11, 12, 13 guys that can come in and contribute. It's tough to find that combination, and that's what we have seen this year in a non-conference. Again, you're in a one big lead. Non-conference doesn't matter. It's nice to win. If you don't, it's all about what happens in conference play, which is coming up. But we've seen a high ceiling of a team that can play against anybody, and we've also seen a team, when things are not working right, can lose to anybody as well, and that's what we have right now. We have a team that's 5-6 that has some impressive wins, has blown out a couple teams on the road.
And you have a team that played Coastal Carolina at home. That's a good Coastal team. They're much improved, right? You fall behind 17-3. You have a chance to win the game. Like, this team is so Jekyll and Hyde in good and bad ways that there are stretches, they look like the best team in the CAA. And there are stretches where you hold your breath and you pray you get to the media timeout, right? So I will tell you, if you come to a game, anything can happen with this group. Anybody can go off. Jason Sinani's been good, but others have found, Nolan Dorsey's been better, healthy this year and eligible to play. They have a tough stretch here before Christmas with a good Longwood team. And then obviously the Carolina game is what it is, right? That's exposure. That's the big market. But then in the conference, they play really good teams early. So if you want to see them face the best of the best, like this next month, there's some really good games on the schedule.
Off the gate, you have Drexel to open the conference season. I think that's important to emphasize, too, is they've got to find a way to bridge the gap between the Jekyll and the Hyde. They've got to figure out where they are in conference play to be consistent. Because even in the CAA, the teams that are at the very bottom and the teams that are at the top are not that far off as it was in the Big South, where if you're playing a team at the bottom, you can kind of guess, and then the top 3 teams are what we're really focusing on. You never kind of know what you're going to get on a conference night in the CAA. So Campbell really is going to be up against it. But I think the thing that has impressed me the most is that defensively, they've been sound through the year. They haven't really gotten the doors blown off them except for at Ohio State. I think they have to offensively understand what they're trying to do offensively that helps them more. Obviously, when you bring in a bunch of new guys, and this is not the easiest system to learn, and just to come in right in and go, hey, this is what we know, they have to get better in the system. And I think as they develop more into the system, they'll be a whole lot better than they have been in the last few games. But again, they got to find a way to kind of bridge the gap and find what middle is for them to really have a determination of who they are as a team. Right now.
And you mentioned something that is, not trying to put an orange glaze on this or what have you, but this is a team this is the best defensive team that he has had since he has been here. And he's had some pretty good defensive teams. To a man, I talk about the 0 through 13 that can help you offensively and can come in and keep moving the ball. All of these players are bought in defensively. That's very hard to do and to get a team to play tough defensively, and that's what gives them a chance in every single game they have. They have won some games where they have not shot well because they played such good defense. They have good shooters on the team. If guys start to click consistently and start to play consistently, again, you have a lot of options out there on the floor.
And let's not forget, Adam Schefter dropped a body on Doug Gottlieb this week. Campbell basketball did the same in the preseason tournament up in Green Bay. So I think we've seen games where they've clicked. They've had three double figures. They've played well. What I like, too, is it's interesting with this program. When they're underdogs or underrated or not considered a favorite, they kind of play their best on the road, especially early. Like, I wouldn't sleep on a win at Wilmington or a win at Hampton. Like, they may surprise you and lose to a Morgan State, but beat somebody they're not supposed to. And that's what kind of makes this team, for me, so fascinating.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, and I was saying, too, they have put this together intentionally. They have had a tougher non-conference schedule than they usually have, and they have played so much on the road. They just finished a stretch of 6 of 7 on the road, and there's some long road trips. Ohio State, Green Bay, Evansville, Baltimore, which was a 6-hour bus trip and everything like that. So they have been battle-hardened, battle-tested. When they take the 2-hour bus drive to UNCW, it's going to seem like nothing. So all of these things,
the Cape Fear River Derby.
Yeah.
Now we're talking my language.
all of these things add up to the. There's been sometimes it hasn't looked good. There's been some times it looks good. There's a time being like, okay, all of this. What can they learn? What they can get out of it? What do they go through? Adds up to conference, and we will find out conference-wise, and we'll find out pretty quickly here because your first 5 games, only 2 are at home. You get Drexel on January 2nd, at UNCW, one of the favorites, at Hampton, a much improved Hampton team, but a team that you should beat, at Elon, who is becoming your peers. They're doing a lot better
Maybe
this,
Notre Dame in the
but they are,
knockout,
and they are the team that you are most like as a university, and then, the back-to-back champs without their head coach, Pat Kelsey, in Charleston. So will all this lead to better play in the CAA, success in the CAA? We'll know by the middle of January.
Yeah, I think everyone around the team knows that if they're going to do anything in the CAA immediately, that it's this year, and they've got to do it, and they have to do it now. And I think there's an urgency around the team to get it done. I think they can get it done. I know that there's a lot of things surrounding the team where it can be easy to get lost in the noise. And I just don't want them to get lost in the noise. If you focus on where you need to be at the current moment and know that you have the guys, you have the personnel, you have the strategy, the only thing that's missing from this Campbell men's basketball team is execution. That's the only thing missing. They have the preparation, they have the personnel, they have the strategy. They just have to execute. And when we've seen it, when they do execute, they can beat anybody on any given night. When they don't execute, they really struggle, and I think they just have to execute.
Can we go back to favorite moments of the year? I have 2 with this men's basketball team. One, it's the Hofstra win at home early in the conference.
Yep.
Kevin McGeehan jumping with his arms, fist pumping, spinning at midcourt. That was just you guys know Kevin.
Yeah.
He shows his personality in moments, and when it comes out, I enjoy that as a fan. I want to see that passion from him. So him jumping in the air 360 fist pump turn like he's Maradona. And then 2, the hug between Davis Dupree and Del Orso after beating Wilmington. The crowd comes storming, the student section and the ransom group. That was the week that court storming was debated hotly around the country. And we said, you know what? Let's go. And we put 500-600 people on the court and beat a really good Wilmington team in overtime.
Yeah, again, some very good moments, some very high highs. Nolan Dorsey, by the way, CAA Player of the Week for men's basketball. He was the best defender. Now he started to score. That's the kind of talent. And look, there's 7-8 other guys that could go off and be the CAA Player of the Week. So we taped this podcast before the Longwood game, which would have been a couple of days ago. Of course, the big one, December 29th, which will be fun. First time men's basketball has ever played North Carolina. December 29th. It's a Sunday, 8 o'clock, nationally televised on the ACC network. There are a limited number of tickets available for Campbell fans. It'll be in a Campbell section in the upper deck, $40, which is pretty good to get into the Dean Dome. Go to gocamels.com for that. And then Campbell back home to start CAA play January 2nd against Drexel. Everything on gocamels.com. Hey, we talk about our wrestling team as well as wrestling. You might, if you are from the outside, just occasionally looking in, you say, "What's the deal? They're 1-4. This is a really good team. This was supposed to be the really good year." Their 4 losses have come to 4 ranked teams. 3 of them have been in the top 10. This is when you'll see the Campbell wrestling team fully healthy, ready to go. They'll finally have some home matches as well, and this is when they get into conference play and start dominating.
Yeah, when you look at wrestling, you have to take the schedule like you take a basketball schedule. When you look at it and go, we need to play these tougher teams to kind of see where we are, see what we have. Because in wrestling, more like track and field, it's a little bit different where every individual effort counts towards a team score or a team goal or every individual match. And again, anything can happen in any race or any competition that you have. And so I think that they're built for this year. I think that they have a lot of guys who have experience that are seniors, Adi Ali, Anthony Moulton, who's come back. So they have a lot of guys who are built for this year, and they are ready to run the table in the SoCon. And I'm just excited for conference play to see what they're able to do.
It should be a whole lot of fun. So the winter going ahead full steam, and then spring schedules came out this week. We're going to do a deep dive into it when we come back here. We're going to do these podcasts once a month, but I want to get all of your guys' perspective. Zach Berly on the women's lacrosse schedule and this team just from the outside looking in. We'll hit a little bit on the spring sports.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a really great schedule, not just overall, but like at home. They're going to start with Charlotte and then High Point, who they had a really fun run when they were right at the end of the Big South. They played them, in the year where they went to the final. It was a lot of fun. So they're going to have them back at home. 3 games to start at home. Radford, and then they've got the really big one, Duke, which is coming up on March 10th. They played them in Durham last year. Of course, I mean, Duke are one of the best programs. You kind of know how that game's going to go, but it's still going to be great to have them back. The last time Duke were here, Charlotte North, one of the greatest ever players to play women's lacrosse, was here playing with them. So you're going to see some big names. It's going to be a really great exposure test for them. So,
and that's Education Day, right?
Yeah, it's going to be a special before noon Education Day start.
Yeah. It'll be fun, though. I mean, you're just looking at their conference schedule. They've got, 4 good teams. That's the problem with this conference in the women's lacrosse side is there are so many good teams.
Yeah.
I mean, they're coming from areas that lacrosse is a real hotbed, which, as we've known, the South has gotten a lot better, but it's kind of lagging behind in both the recruits. You got to go up north. You got to go to Maryland, and you're seeing a lot of these kids that are coming into classes are coming from southern areas now as the game continues to grow. But I think what's the most interesting for them is the people that are coming back on this team. So last season they, were coming into the CAA knowing that it was going to be so much different, but using it as a good launch pad, having gone to the final in the Big South. But then they lost some really big names to injury. Rasa Welsh was one of those. I mean, the first person that's going to pop in your head is Sam Bischoff, but I would argue that this team is nothing the way it is without Rasa Welsh as well. They are really yin and yang, the two of them. They make it happen together. So you're going to have the big score in Sam Bischoff. To have her back another year is going to be incredible to watch. Also for this team, she is so dynamic in front of cage. And then Rasa Welsh, there's always with this Campbell team been someone really incredible behind the cage pulling the strings, and Rasa Welsh is the next iteration of that. She played a little bit kind of in front of cage some last year before she got injured, so she really is a threat all around the fan. But when having those two back alone, and then you're counting in a couple of really big names alongside that, like Jocelyn Hambury, who's been a really incredible transfer player. It doesn't feel like that because she's been here for so long now.
She's almost played a 4-year career, which is incredible.
Yeah, she's another one that's really talented. So, Carson Shoup in the back as well. There's some new mix around of who's going to be in the cage for them. So there are some new pieces, but that's kind of one of those scenarios you hear in college sports nowadays, and we're getting to the end of the golden days where they came back for this. There are so many players that came back for another year that have eligibility left and can play another big season, and it means so much to them. Just talking to them, we had their media day just a few weeks ago, and they are so ready for it. Yeah. They didn't get a full run at their first season in the CAA, so they're going to make up for it from last year, and I know they're going to come out swinging. Yeah.
Absolutely. A lot is going to go on with a rebuilding track and field team. Tennis doing what they did. They have a pretty robust fall schedule, some good results. In golf, really, it has been one of the best falls for both the men and the women. So expect some big things from golf. And then, speaking of new coaches, both on our baseball team, both on our softball team, 2 new coaches two good coaches, and a lot of games at home. I tell you what, guys, February is going to be nuts here in the Creek because with lacrosse, you talked about all of those home matches. With baseball and softball, it's very home heavy. These schedules were made a couple of years in advance. New coaches have come in now. It's a really, really, really good, really, really tough baseball schedule. But February, pretty much every day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's going to be 3 or 4 things going on in all these things. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be a lot of fun to see these new coaches with, let's face it, softball, baseball, 2 of the premier teams on campus.
It's crazy with how baseball schedules work. So this schedule was decided January of last year. It's already been in the books for a year and, X amount of months. And then next year's schedule is largely already booked because of previous contracts. It's a weird sport that way with how you do home and homes, but to have Georgia Southern come here, UConn, a super regional team, to play Santa Barbara, top 25 team to open the year down in taco country in Santa Barbara. Like, they throw taco shells on the field when they hit home runs. It's a cool tradition. Oh, yeah. They score a soccer goal and they throw taco shells. They hit home runs, they throw taco shells.
The Gauchos.
We're going to start doing that with barbecue.
You could just start throwing redneck barbecue laughs on the
there
field.
You go.
Yeah. One of our proud sponsors.
Shout out.
Of pork.
But in Texas State, too. Like, those are 3 elite baseball programs that have made regionals the last 2 years, and they're all coming to Bowie's Creek. Credit Justin, and now Mark's inheriting the schedule. They're going to be tested for the first 21 of 25 at home. That's big boy baseball.
A stretch of 19 of 20 as well.
Lendl is weeping softly.
Nighttime.
Please, if whatever you pray to, pray for the athletic staff in February and March. Right now, just send a prayer.
Yeah, we have had...
And our student workers. Don't forget them, too.
And to host Wilmington and Northeastern, 2 of the top 3 or 4 teams. Like, we get the good teams at home this year in the league.
They keep coming.
All in the first 5 weeks.
And coming.
Yeah. But then there's a road trip in February.
Yeah.
In April, eventually.
Somewhere. When we hit conference play, that's when they go on the road.
Perfect segue as get your tickets early because a lot of games are going to happen early. If you're like, I'll buy my season tickets in March, you're not going to have but 6 games left. Season tickets on sale now at gocamels.com. Speaking of a team that's been home a lot the first couple of months, softball, brand new head coach. This program, remember, they brought home a trophy in the CAA last year under a different coach. 4 years, 4 regular season titles, 3 tournament titles, 2 different coaches, and now we go to a 3rd coaching staff.
Well, if this, I'm sure the schedule came out today, so I'm sure the parents are extremely excited about the schedule. Not just because we have a lot of games at home, a couple of tournaments at home, but most of their games are in the state of North Carolina. They have a lot that are in the actual state. They have a few road trips where they go to Monmouth and they go up north, but most of it is either in and around North Carolina or Virginia, or they have the one trip to Charleston. But talking with Coach Carasoni, she's all about winning. I know there's a lot of things that happen with the portal and the coaching change around softball, and obviously when losing Isabella Smith is a blow. It is. There's no way around it. But Campbell has a lot of things to figure out in the circle. They have the outfield that they're happy about that's still there. They have some things to figure out on the infield. But if there's a coach that can get them together, it's definitely Coach Carasoni.
Yeah, if you don't know too much about her, she is a legend, one of the best ever to play at Auburn, a really good program in the best the former Pac-12. Okay, all right. The Pac-12 is Pac-4 right now. I look over at you at USC. They have a lot of good things there, but the best softball conference in the entire nation, and she has, I think it's 6 different all-time records, hits, batting average, home runs. It's amazing what she has done, and she just brings a lot of youthful exuberance and also someone that has done it. And look, that has been the pattern for a winning coach. The last 2 coaches here at Campbell were unbelievable Power 5 all-stars in softball, right?
And then
you have Coach McDonald and Coach Prater, 2 that were unbelievable, all-conference, national, all-American players, and you bring another win in to coach your team.
And Coach Carasoni has the nerve to say that she was an average player in college, and then you go and look at her stats, and it's like, that's absolutely ridiculous. There's no way. But I think she has a vision. She has a plan, and I think, like I said, if anyone can get them together where they need to be, which you want to be together this year because you host the conference tournament. So it would be a shame that you don't get into the conference tournament if you host it. And so I think that they definitely want to be their best this year when it comes to conference play. And I think the schedule indicates that. They've got a lot of tough opponents early.
Absolutely. a lot of new in the spring. I thought this worked pretty good. I might have to do a little more editing than usual, but this will be good. We're going to do this once a month now, guys. Does that sound good?
Yep, once a month.
That'll do it for the Camel Call podcast. For Zach Berly, Lendl Suggs.
What was everyone's favorite moment of the year? I gave mine with the McGeehan 360 spinning fist pump.
I mean, we
What about
thought
you
you just, you pretty much covered everything.
There's too many tangents, from
Yes,
honest.
yes. For the Camel Call podcast, I think we'll do this again. We'll see if our bosses let us. For Lendl Suggs and Zach Berly,
is he not my boss?
Evan Budrovich, I'm Chris Hemeyer saying so long, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, have a great new year. We will talk to you next year. Thanks for tuning in.
Go Camels.